Hi everyone, so welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to do another rose. As you know, I don't normally do life-size flowers. I tend to do more flowers to put on cakes, but there again, if you wanted to put a single flower on a cake, then a life-size one is okay. The only thing you've got to be careful of is not overpowering your cake, and if you put too many large flowers on a cake it can look top heavy. Now the rose I'm going to do today is one called Warm Wishes. Now one thing I wanted to explain about things, because I bought some cutters and they're actually called David Austin cutters. David Austin is not the name of or the shape of a rose. David Austin is a grower, and they grow over 800 varieties of roses, of which nearly 200 of them are English roses that they've bred themselves, and that cover a wide variety of different types, from HT roses, floribundas, rambling roses, climbing roses, standard roses. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain the difference between the roses. Now the one I'm going to do today is what we call an HT rose, which is the one where you've got the tight petals in the middle. Then you've got the shrub roses, which are the ones with the fluffy centres that can cover anything from the ones with either 4 sets of petals, starting out with full petals on the outside, or fluffy petals on the inside. Then you've got your floribunda roses, which tend to open up and show the stamens in the centre, which can cover a wide variety of, some with lots of different layers of petals to ones that have got single petals. Some of them resemble the wild rambling roses, which are the ones that tend to be just one layer of petals. So that's just a bit of an idea about roses, just to put you in the picture of the different types. So I'm going to take you down to my board now. I'm going to show you the cutters that I'm going to use. Right, so these two here are part of a set that I got that are actually called David Austin roses, and they're from a company called Valley Cutters. I found on eBay. And not only do you get those two cutters in with it, you also get these heart-shaped ones, which are the ones that you would use for doing the shrub roses, which are the ones with the frilly centres, which I'm going to do one of those later. I have done one before, but I wasn't particularly happy with that one, so I'm going to do this again. But I am working on some new varieties that I haven't quite got my head round yet, so I'm going to put those to one side. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with this petal here, which is a normal large rose petal, which I'm going to have to be careful of because the seal's broken on that one, to do the first layers of petals for the centre of the rose, which is this part here, which I've already done. So what I've done is I've done them at different stages, so that I've got them all ready, so I can do it all in one go. So I'm just going to put those to one side. Then I'm also going to use a large calyx for the calyx, which is the largest one out of the large set. Now with the rose cutters, I'm using my normal set of cutters here for rose leaves, but I'm taking the small one out. And some time ago when I was in a class, Bernadette, who was teaching us, asked me to get some of these larger ones made for the roses that we're doing in that particular class. So I'm going to use that together. So what I'm going to do is the rose leaves for a full-size rose I tend to do larger. So as you can see, I've used the large one at the top, and then I've used the large one out of the normal set for the second layer and the small one for the third layer. So I'm just going to pop all those to one side because we don't need those just now, and just get rid of my little book with my information in there. David Austin rose growers have been going for over 60 years, so it's worth having a look at their website, which is David Austin's Roses, all one word, .co.uk. For anybody abroad, obviously you'd have to look at your own growers over there. I'm sure that you may be able to get them abroad as well. And another website that I'm going to use, I'm just going to show you this first as well, because this is a new veinner that I've got for rose petals, because I've tried loads of different ones and I haven't really been happy with a lot of them, but this is the latest one that I've got that I'm using on this rose here, which I really like. And it was one of the ladies that follow me on YouTube that told me about it. She got a centre for the scabious when I did the scabious video, and instead of doing the centre the way I did, she wanted to cheat and get a mould for it, and she got it from this particular site. And this one is from where are we? sugardesigns.co.uk. So if you have a look on there, they haven't got a massive range, but they have got some nice veiners on there. They're not too bad a price either, but I do really like her rose veiner, so maybe sometime in the future I might try some others as well. So getting back to the rose, now I'm starting off with a polystyrene centre. To put it in proportion, if you go back to the balls that I used for the scabious, I've got half of one here, which was an inch ball, and this is slightly smaller, so I'd say this is probably about 3/4 of an inch, this one across the bottom. It's not the largest one in the cell buds, if you can get hold of cell buds from York. This is the second size, the next size down from the largest one. Thing is with roses, some people say they look like cabbages when they make them, and the reason for that is because the centre's too big. So try not to do too big a centre. If you are going to do it in flower paste, bear in mind that the rose is going to be a lot heavier. That's why we use the polystyrene centres, to cut down on the weight of the flower. Right, so the colour that I've used here is a peach colour. So I'll just get this working again. And I'm going to do all of the first layers of this, which I think I put 3 layers on there, all in the same colour to start this off. So let's get some white fat on my board. Now I'm putting more into this than I normally put into the smaller roses. With the smaller roses, they only put about 4 layers of petals on to do a full rose, but when you're doing a small one, you don't need to put as much into it. But if you're going to do a specimen flower on a cake, then obviously you would put more into that. So for these petals, you need to really roll your paste really thin. So keep on rolling and rolling and rolling until you get it as thin as you can get it. Don't be frightened of getting it too thin. The thing is with flower paste, because it's made with gums, which is why some people call it gum paste, but the correct name for it is flower paste, it makes it very stretchy, unlike your normal sugar paste that you would cover a cake with. And you see how much I'm rolling this to get this really, really thin. I wouldn't like to tell you what the thickness is because it's so thin. It's like tissue paper, basically. According to the lady that taught me when I first started, you should be able to read a newspaper through it when you're doing these sort of petals. Now in competition I was told that, because I picked up on my paste, they said it was too thin. I like it thin. But they say as long as the edges are thin, then they don't mind it being a little bit thicker in the centre. So I'm going to cut out 9 petals, because I'm going to do this all in one go. If you're only a beginner, don't cut 9 petals out, just cut 3 out at a time. Sorry, I'm cutting out 10 petals. I beg your pardon, I missed one. 9, and I'll cut one out at the top there. Right, and the reason I'm cutting 10 out is because I want one to cover the centre of the polystyrene bud that I'm going to put in the centre first of all. So we'll wrap that up. And should have a palette knife on it. Oh, there it is. Let's get rid of that cutter because I don't need that anymore. We get these onto the... This is a palette knife used for art. This is one from Winsor Newton, which are well known for their oil paints, and they do equipment as well. You know, sometimes it's worth paying a little bit more for something, although here in the UK we have the range, which I tend to go for things like this because they tend to be cheaper than anywhere else. In your own country it's worth shopping around. If you buy them in a Sugarcraft shop, you're generally going to pay a lot more money for them, so shop around before you buy things. I know I'm a Yorkshireman and we're a bit tight up here, but you know what they say, don't you? Save a penny, it looks after the pounds. Right, so I'm going to start by thinning the edges with my ball tool. So start at the top and go down one side and then down the other side. You can do it again if necessary. It doesn't matter about getting the petals a bit frillier, because with a rose it makes them easier to shape if you get them frilly on the edge to start off with. And don't be frightened of it. A lot of people think just because the paste is thin it's going to tear, but if you've got your paste right, you shouldn't have any difficulty with it. Depends on what kind of paste you're using. I'm not going to cut as many petals out with some of the other layers because there's just a lot on this first layer. So I'm just going to switch off and come back with these. Now I've thinned all the edges. I've actually veined some of these petals, so I'm just going to vein the last three that I've got. So what I'm doing is I'm popping them into the veiner near to the top, not right to the top. Give that a good press. And the advantage with this sort of veiner is that it shapes your petals as well as veining it, because it's been made in the shape of the petal the way it is in nature. Although so you do have to, when we get onto the later stages, have to do different things to it just to finish the rose off. That one's just curled up a little bit. There we are. It doesn't matter if there's a little bit of a flaw in your petals, don't worry about that, because nothing's perfect in nature. Right, now they're all veined. Although it doesn't matter as much if you don't want to vein the centre petals, it doesn't matter because you can't really see it on there, but I am doing starting as I mean to go on. So then you've got your bud. Now I've got all the petals veined with the front of the petal facing up, because they're going to go towards the centre here. So I'm going to start off with that one that was a little bit out of shape, and I'm going to glue practically all of it. I'm only leaving the tiny little bit that's not got any glue on at the top. Now this is basically the same way as you would normally do any rose, nothing different about this. So bring the first part round as far as you can get it, and then bring the other side right the way around. And basically when you look down the centre of the rose there, you shouldn't be able to see the centre if you wrap it round as tight as you can, so it's almost to a point. So then if we do 3 more petals, and this time I'm only going to glue 2/3 of it. So basically I'm starting right to where the curve starts there. That's all I'm going to glue from. Like that. Then if you start off with your first one facing that one you've just put on, and make it so it's very slightly higher than the first one, then bring one side round, leaving one side open. Take the next one that goes halfway across that one and bring both sides round. Turn it round and then open that back up again, and then take your last one, then that goes halfway across the first one. Just open that up a little bit more, otherwise they're going to stick together. Tuck that one in like that, and then bring the first one round like that. I'm not trying to open the petals up here, they fall where they fall on this. Right, so the next three. This time I'm going to glue half the petal. And again I'm going to start across the joint where I've just finished there, more or less at the same level, and again pop that round, take the next one across that. So you're aiming to get your centre of your petal across where the join is on the row below, because they're not going to overlap quite as much because it's opening out a little bit more. And then again across there like that. Tuck that one in and bring that back one round like that, and you can go around and neaten that up and tighten that up. Okay, and then the last layer I'm only going to glue about a third of the petal this time, so not quite as much glue. If you need more glue on you can add it later, but try not to get too much glue on. And then again we're going to go over the joint like that. I'm going to bring that very slightly higher up, bring that round, leave that one open, and again this time you're aiming to get over the middle of the edge of the petal there in position, so it's in the middle of this petal, the edge of the previous layer that is. If they don't overlap, they don't overlap, it doesn't matter, and bring that back round. Right, so once you've got to that stage I would leave that to dry and not do any more on it, because if you try to put too much on it, and particularly with the next petals, because I'm going to turn it upside down to dry, the whole thing can come off of the cell bud. So I've put that to dry now. So I've got one here that I've already done. So the next thing we're going to do now is get the next colour. Now I've already coloured my paste here. I think that's the next one. No, that's the lighter one, that's the darker one. Make sure you've worked your paste so it's soft enough to roll out. I picked some green up on my board there from somewhere. Bit more white fat on your board. Don't put a lot on. You just need enough to hold your paste down on the board. Don't dust it. Unless you're if you're in a climate where it's very humid, you might use dust instead of the grease. But here in the UK we don't. We use the white vegetable fat. Picked a hair up from somewhere. Not mine, it's a dark one, so I don't know where that's come from. Again, you want to get it really thin. All these petals that you're going to put on directly onto the centre need to be extremely thin. You can't afford to do it too thick because it looks very heavy and clumsy. I've noticed sometimes when I put pictures on Facebook and I look at the pictures afterwards, sometimes the petals that I've done look thick to me, and I've got them really thin, but it's just the way the camera picks it up, unfortunately. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go on to the smaller out of the two shaped petals, and I'm going to cut out 3 in this colour. So that's 1, 2, 3. I'll just put that to one side. Wrap that up. Onto my foam pad. And thin round your tops. I always go more over the top again to make sure that it's really thin and it's quite frilly, because it's a lot easier to shape your petals if you do that. That is important, is the top part, this rounded part here. Down the side doesn't matter so much because you're not going to see that. Right, so those to one side, back into the Vena. This time I'm going to put it onto the top of the Vena so that where the petal curves back like that, it goes into the Vena like that. And with the top, and then take that out of the Vena. As you can see, it's already starting to shape it. I quite like these new rose petal cutters, because if you look at roses, they don't actually have a straight edge, and if you start doing it with scissors and that, it just makes a lot more work. If you can get a cutter in the shape of, it makes life an awful lot easier. I'm doing that on the wrong side. But then it all depends on how much you want to spend and how much you're going to use it. I know over the years I've spent an awful lot of money on cutters and veiners and other equipment that I've got. It must very easily spread into the thousands, but that's when I mean, I have done it as a business for a long time anyway, so that's why I've spent a lot more money. But if you're an amateur, you might not want to spend that much. So that one's already dry, so I'm just going to lay that down there for now, and then I'm going to glue half of the petal. I'm just going to move my camera up a little bit this way so you can see what I'm doing, then it's easier for me to, just so I don't go out of shot. So again, I'm going to start off with the first one very slightly higher than the previous layer. Wrap that round, keeping this side loose. Then your next one goes over that, same as you did with the first layer of 3. And these are going to come further down, so they're going to cover the base of your cone. Then that goes halfway across that one. glue that down, and then bring your first one over that, like that. Now you can start to shape your petals back now when you get to this stage. So for the first one, I'm going to curve your petals back. So I use my middle finger and thumb to do this. If you get into the habit of doing that, you just get it just the right shape that you want it to be. So that one wants to curve back like that. Okay, so we'll put that to dry. You can leave that one right side up because that's fine at that stage. Then we go on to our paste and get on to the next colour, which is this one. All I've done with each of these colours, because I've already made one up to the last next to the last stage, add the same amount of white into your colour. It depends on what you're doing. If you're doing a white rose, you don't do that, or if you're doing a red or a burgundy rose, I wouldn't add any white into it. Keep it all the same colour. So you need to make sure you make plenty of paste to do all your petals, because it's very difficult to get the exact same colour if you have to start mixing it again. As those that have done it for a long time will know what I'm talking about. Hang on, have I got some white somewhere? Yeah, there. What I'm going to do is that first layer that I've used, I'm going to add the white into this just to show you what I've done, to get it to that shade. So basically you need about the same amount of paste, like that. It doesn't have to be exact, but as near as damn it, and then knead that in. And I know I've said it before, but there's the best way to find out if you've got your colour all the way through your paste. I think that was a bit dark actually, so it's a good job I needed that in. That wasn't the right one. If you get your paste, then if you cut through your paste and have a look at the inside, if the colour's all the way through, you'll be able to tell. If it's a bit streaky, then just carry on kneading it until you get it so it's your colour's evenly distributed all the way through your paste. Right, get rid of that one. Might need a bit more white fat on there. Just need a tiny little bit of grit, just so that the paste stays, because when you're rolling it really thin, you'll find it a lot easier to do this. If you're using powder, it can dry your paste out. That's why I won't use it, and I don't recommend it. And then it makes your paste unusable when you want to use it further down the line as well. Then it gets too dry and you end up wasting a lot of it. No disrespect to people that do it that way, but this is the way I was taught. This is where we've always done it, and a lot of our demonstrators went to other countries to teach other people how to do it. That's why this sort of thing is worldwide now, but it did start off over here. Some of the demonstrators are still with us, some of them are not. But I know the lady that taught me was one of the ones that went over to America to teach American cake decorators how to make flowers. Right, so once we've done that, then this time I'm going to cut out 5 petals with that cutter. Oops, wrong one. There we are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So onto your pad. Thin your edges again. And then they want to go into your Verner. Making sure that the petal is right up to the top of your Verner there. Get it the right way up. There isn't a wrong way of putting this Verner on because of the shape of it, but sometimes when you turn things round when you take them off, you know, so at least I do anyway, so that's my excuse and I'm sticking to it. Now then, when I've done this, I'm doing it on the wrong one again, aren't I? It's a good job you can't talk to me through the camera because you'd be shouting at me saying, wrong one, wrong side. What I was going to say was, at this stage, I'm not going to glue these directly onto the rose now. I'm going to put these to one side. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to do this layer, and then the next layer, and then they're going to be left to dry a little before I put them on, and I'll explain why in a second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these on. I'm going to use formers for this. So I've got some small formers. These are from Cellcrafts. If you haven't got these, you could always make a former out of some foil or something like that, but you need something that's hollow and round like this. So if you could find something that's sort of like a similar shape, then you can do it that way. So I'm going to make the next 2 layers and put them into the formers. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to curl the back of the petals back. So if you get it onto a corner like that and roll it, then turn that round the other way and come back this way like that. Then if you can get that into your former with the top edge on like that and just curve that back underneath it so that that stays put. Just takes a little bit of time. Don't try and rush this. Don't forget to turn it over so that you've got it on the back to do this. What have I done with me? There it is. So small I can't see it. Roll it back, turn it over and roll it back. Sometimes it stays, sometimes it doesn't. So I'm just going to do this side again. bit like when I was doing the chrysanthemums, is this, rolling the paste back like that using a cell stick. So that can go into there like that, and curl that back under there like that. So just leave that to, I'm just going to put 2 in there. They don't all have to be the same either, you know, because flowers do tend to vary a bit, you know, so as I keep saying, there's nothing perfect in nature. So sometimes the more haphazard things are, the better they look. Just curve that under like that and like that. The reason I'm doing this is so that when I get them, now just push that down so that that's flat to the burner, to the former. Last one. And into the former. Now just sort of shape themselves in because it's rounded at the bottom. There we are. So we can put those to one side to dry. Out of the way. Oops. Dropped one. Fortunately it was the one with 1 petal in it. Put that back in there. And that one. That one's managed to straighten itself out, so we'll just reform that one. The reason I'm doing this is when I come to put them on, then they're already have started drying on the top edge, and the petal should stay in shape. There we are. It's better. Put that up there. So I'm going to do the same thing with the next layer, but this time I'm going to use the larger cutter. When I find where I put it. There. So again, you want 5 of these. I'm going to cut out 6 petals because I'm going to do a layer of wired petals as well, and I want the wired petals to dry completely. I have already got a set made, so we'll mix some white into it. So I'm going to bring it down another shade. I'm going to mix that in with this. Then I've got plenty of paste here. Again, just make sure that you cut through your paste just to make sure. So I'm just checking to see if my microphone's still on, because I haven't changed the battery in it, because I have been in the habit in the past of recording videos and forgetting to switch the microphone on. So we'll just cut through that. That's alright all the way through. I'm only going to do one of the wide petals for the simple reason that I've already got some made, and I want to be able to finish this off in one go. And I'm going to have a break and go and have some lunch and a coffee while these are setting a bit, so don't worry, I'm not leaving you hanging on, I'm switching off. Again, getting your paste, make sure for all these layers, make sure you get it really thin. And then I want my larger cutter, there it is, and I want 5 of those. And I'm going to cut out a 6th one. Now, if you're doing the wide petals, I would do it with a ridge. If you've managed to get hold of one of these rolling pins that I told you about in the last video, what was the last video that I did? The anemones. I think it was in that one. I did tell Pete, I did a bit of research to have a look online to see where you could get something similar to this, and there are 1 or 2 about. So take that paste away. If I can't get my wire into this without it coming out, then I will have to do a ridge one, but we'll see how we get on. Sometimes I can, sometimes I can't, but it's quite a large petal this, so I'll just have to pick out which I think is the thickest petal and wire that one. So there again, these want to go onto the pad. That looks a bit thicker, I'll use that one. And I'm going to go over the top again to make sure these are nice and frilly, so they're a lot easier to shape. The reason I go from the centre outwards is because to start the paste to curl back this way, so it's making the petal go the way you want it to go when it comes to shaping it. Oops. Now that one, I'm going to try and get the wire into that. So I'm using a 28 gauge white wire for these. You could use a 26. If you've got a ridge, 26 is okay, but see if I can get the wire up this without it coming out. Don't forget, between your finger and your thumb, so you can feel where the wire is, where it's going. Let's have a look. No, it's come out. I'll do another one. Right, so Next step, again, into your veiner. Doesn't matter about the bottom, just make sure the top goes right into the top of the veiner, like that. Give it a really good press, and then bring that out. In actual fact, this petal does actually fit into here, so the rose petal that this was taken from must have been the same size. Right, so once we've got those petals done, just move that out of the way. Turn it over and then get yourself stick, and again, like you did before, curl the edges in. Now if you wanted to with this one, you could do the two sides like that and then do the middle one in as well and roll that back as well on some of your petals. It depends on how you want your rose to look. I haven't done that on the petals that I've done, but that would look quite nice as well. It depends which variety you're looking at. If you go to that website that I gave you for David Austin, and have a look on there, you'd be surprised how many different shapes and different types of roses. It's absolutely fascinating, really is. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I go for a coffee at a garden centre every week with a friend of mine, walking around the flowers and having a good look at them and taking note of how they are and what colours they come in and everything. I'll give that a bit of a curl back as well. Because this is a bigger petal, you can get away with it. Right, put that one to one side. Don't forget, people, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and if you've got any questions about anything, please do get in touch. I'm getting a few more people sending me questions, so please leave me messages, even if it's just to say that you've enjoyed the video. It's nice to hear back from people, and I will always reply. Unlike some of the channels that I subscribe to, I do reply. Unless it gets to that stage where it's difficult for me to reply, but it hasn't got to that stage yet anyway, and I hope it never does. I hope I'll always be able to get in touch with you all if you ask something. And yeah, and don't forget to like as well, do the thumbs up, what's it and that. It's always nice to see what people think about what you're doing, because the only way that we can improve is by comments you get from people who are watching the videos. I mean, I have had criticisms in the past, and I don't mind that, you know, because at first, when I first started, I had difficulty trying to keep everything on camera, and people let me know, and that's fine. because if you don't tell me, I don't always know, because I don't always watch the whole video back. Right, so that's that one done. Just one more to do, and then I can get onto the wired one. And then I'm going to have a break, and then I'm going to come back when these have had a chance to dry a bit for me to attach them to the centre. There we are. So that's that done. Right, the wide one, I'm only going to do one of these petals. I mean, to finish that rose off, I can always make some later. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a small piece of paste here. Then I'm going to add some more white into that. Need more than that. And then this will be the final layer. I don't know whether I mentioned it earlier on, but the name of this particular rose that I'm doing is called Warm Wishes. So if you want to have a look it up, I am going to sort of overemphasise some of the colouring on it, because sometimes with some of the roses, especially if it's a plain colour, they can look a bit boring if you don't add something to them. So I am going to sort of overemphasise, I should say, some little bits on this. Just make sure that's wide enough. Where's my cutter? There. Yeah, that's wide enough. Ridge rolling pin. Where are you there? I'm just going to do a ridge up the centre. I know one of my followers has got one of these rolling pins, or she was getting one from a recommendation that I gave her, so I hope you're managing alright with this. I'm just trying to get my paste a little bit thinner because it was a little bit thick, was that. Right, so then you get your ridge up the centre of your petal, cut that out, and of course you want another 5 of these. Between your finger and your first finger and your thumb. Get your wire, twist it into the bottom, and then feed it up your ridge. If it comes out, you can usually feel it, just pull it back and go back in again. Right, there we are, not showing this time, so we can put that on there. Onto the pad. Now the difficult part is when you come to put this into your veinner, this is where you need to be careful with it. What have I done with me? There it is. I always do the ball tooling on the back. You don't have to do, but if you get any ridges in it at all, you don't want them on the front. Just thin out that top edge to make sure that's nice and frilly. So I turn that over into the veinner. Now first, before I put it into the veinner, I'm going to bend the wire now, because that's going to go into there like that. So you make sure that the wire is following the curve of the veinner, because if you don't, then there's a danger of the wire coming out of your paste on the top of your veinner like that. And then just gently, and I've done that wrong way around, haven't I? No, I haven't. I have. I've got my ridge on the front there. Put the petal upside down. I'm just going to do this again. If you get your veining wrong, just put it back into your veiner. Yeah, that's right this time. I did it the wrong way up. And I should have known because I've done plenty of these petals already. Right, give it a good press. That's better. There we are. So that's that. So then I'm just going to turn this over again like I've done with the others. This one you can do more folds into this if you want. Curve that back. Curve that back. And we're just going to do a little bit of a roll on the top there. And then that wants to go into your veiner, the same as you've done with the previous layers, like that. Just let that drop in. And then put those to one side. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to have a break and I'm going to go away and let those petals that I'm going to put on next set a little while I go and have a coffee and something to eat, and then I'll come back with the next layer. Hi everyone, so I'm back again. I've left my petals to dry a little bit. They're not totally dry, but they are starting to firm up a bit. So now we can start adding them onto the centre of the rose that we've already got made. That's the wrong one. I want that one. That's it. What I didn't do on the first layer before I left it to dry was to sort of curve these back a little bit more. So I'm just going to readjust those. Now that they're firming up a little bit, you can start playing about with your petals to get them just as you want them. And put that back. But as I say, I've already got one here that's already dried. So what I'm going to do now to add the rest of the petals is I'm going to do this upside down so that the petals fall into place where I want them to fall. And it doesn't matter where you start with this layer, so I'll just get my small petals over. And I seem to have lost one somewhere. Never mind. I've lost one of my petals, but we'll carry on with that anyway, so I don't know what I've done with that. Must have been when I knocked it over when I put them on at first. So we can take those petals out of the formers now because they're starting to stiffen up a bit, and they're starting to stiffen up in the shape that I want them to be. Those two are stuck together a little bit there. Just take those off. It's bugging me now where my other petal's gone. It'd be right under my nose when I find it. Anyway, so what I'm going to do this time, rather than gluing the petals, I'm going to glue onto the bud. So I'm just going to go all the way around with the glue. I'll be able to add glue wherever I want to as I go along. But I don't want the glue to come too far up the petals because it does affect your petals when you start. So I'm just going to lay that on like that. And that should be very slightly above. Now look underneath to see which way you're going to overlap. Because it's upside down, we're going to go the opposite way. So the overlap on that side, so I'm going to go this way around now. So if you just place your petals and go round like that. Now I'm going to have to improvise here, and I'm going to have to cut another petal out because, as I say, I've lost one somewhere and I don't know where it's gone. But I'm just going to bend that wire over so I can put that upside down. I've just put it into a bit of foam to the side, so I'm just going to quickly cut out another petal. I think I've got some of that paste left. Yeah, there. That's the right colour. So this one isn't going to be as curved as the others, but if I turn that one, bring that back, and if I just turn that upside down, you see the petals are dropping into the position that I want them to be in. I'm just going to have to play around with the other one since I've lost one, so I'll just quickly roll another petal out. This is what I mean about things going wrong. I keep telling people worry about being beginners and being slow and all this sort of thing. It doesn't matter how long you've been doing it, things can go wrong. And as I've always said before, if something goes wrong when I'm doing a demonstration, I don't stop and do it again and then come back. I just go back and correct whatever's gone wrong. Because that wouldn't be fair on me not to show you that things can go wrong even with professionals. No matter how long you've been doing it, things do go wrong. So this one probably won't be shaped like it should be, but we'll see how well we get on with it. You know what they say, don't you, sometimes? More haste, less speed. That's what my mother always taught me anyway. So into the veiner. Vein that one. Get that one out. Oops. My veiner was sticking to the worktop then with the white fat and the suction. Just give that a curve back. And then we can stick that one on. Where are we? Where's my... oh, there it is. So they're overlapping on that side, so that wants to go under that one. I'm just going to put a bit more glue on there because that's probably dried a little bit while I've been doing this. Pop that petal in. Oops. And I have dropped it. Oh! One thing that you can do, as you notice I've stood this on my board, because the centre of it's dried, if you find it easier to stand it upside down, you can do. If you find it easy to work on, so just pop that in there, in between those petals there, and stick that in, and I'll just shape those petals again, back again. So that's those petals in like that. Now the advantage with being able to do it upside down like that, because that's dried, I'm just going to put that onto my foam pad. So now I can do the same thing with the next layer of the larger petals that I've got. And what I can do with that is, where's my glue? There. So I'm just going to go around the top again with the glue. And the thing is with these, because these haven't dried, if I leave them on this pad now, if they fall onto the pad, which they will do, it will hold them in place while they're drying. So sometimes you don't necessarily have to hang it upside down. So if I start off again, I'm just going to reshape that one that I've just put on, because that was a bit... Right, so if I start with the next layer, because these are stiffened up a bit now, so we're going to go right down to the wire with this. So basically the point of each of the petals is going to go next to each other, like that. Let's turn that round. Next one, we'll use that one. Next one. Now if you want to, you can go around and put a bit of glue underneath your petals at this point. Now that one's going to go underneath the first one, so just lift that up, slot that one in like that. So there we are at that stage. So I'm going to leave that upside down on there now. As I say, you could add some glue on if you wanted to. It depends on how open you want your petals to be. So I'm going to pop that to one side to dry now. If I just get rid of these bits off of here. Pop that one up there. Now, as I said before, I only did one of the wired petals, but I have got a load of wired petals already made here. These are already dried, and what I did before they dried, I actually put them onto the roast to make sure that they stayed in place, and then took them off again. So if you feel confident at handling them while they're still soft, you can do, but this one's dried all over now, so we can do the final parts on this. The only part I'm not going to be able to dry before I colour it is the calyx. So I'm going to use some dark green florist tape for this. That's the sticky side. So I'll start that off on my wire and bring that up. Just bring the camera up a little bit further this way so you can see what I'm doing here. And then start adding in your petals. Now each of these petals are going to go in between the first layer you've got there, so that's there. I mean, you could do another layer to go on top of this if you wanted to. It depends on how big you want your rose to be. But you can adjust your petals once you've got them in. Once you've got all your petals in, then you can tape down. Pull your wires down. I'm just going to take that tape back a bit so I can pull all my wires down and make sure they're all in nice and tight. That's come up a bit too high. I want to go back up there again. This is where you get things flopping about if you don't tighten up the wires. Then you can tape down. I'm just going to go back under there because I've got one that's just a little bit, the wire's showing, so I don't want that to be showing. Not that you're going to see it, but there we are. That's better. Make sure they're all covered. Right, if you want to, now you can open this rose out a bit so that these back petals drop back a bit. And you can adjust your petals as you want them. Right, as I say, you could do another layer of petals that drop even further back if you wanted to. It depends on how big you want your rose to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the calyx next. I'm just going to pop that in there. And then I'm going to start colouring. So you've seen me do calyx before, so I'll do this very quickly. The only difference is with this, unlike the small roses that I did in the first video that I did, where I did the spray right at the beginning, I'm going to do the calyx and the hip all in one on this one. Now normally I've done the calyx and then done the hip separately, but when you're doing a larger rose it can be a bit more obvious, and if you're doing competition work then it's better if you can do it this way as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the Mexican hat method for this. So get your paste work nice and so it's easy to work with. So I'm just going to make this a little bit thinner like that. I'm just going to roll it between my first two fingers, and then to get your thumb and your finger behind, then start working your paste outwards. You need to make sure that this part is small enough so that the calyx goes over it. So if you start off by working it all round like that, then onto your board, put a bit of white fat on. So it stays in one place, you're not going to move it around. And then I want my cell stick. This time I'm going to use the larger cell stick. These come in a set with the small one that I used earlier on. Where's it gone? Here somewhere. And roll out. So get it fairly thin. So at this point I need to check my calyx over that to see if that, make sure that fits over the centre. Yes, it does. So there we are. So now we can cut out the calyx. So I can take away the excess paste. It's always a good idea to get something with a pointed end to get out your bits of paste out of the here, if you can. Doesn't matter what you use. There we are. I'm sorry if you can hear that, somebody's playing loud music outside here and it's a bit distracting, so I do apologise, it's not me that's playing it. Right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get I've got some curved nail scissors here, so I'm just going to cut into the side here. And then turn it over to do the other side. Some roses have these little hair-like cuts on all of the sepal, on all of the parts of the calyx. Some don't. Some have it alternate. They might have it on a couple, sometimes on more. Try and keep it fairly close into the side. Try not to cut yourself when you're doing it. Let's turn that over. I'm just going to do it on a couple. Like that. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put that onto my mat. Just move that rose up a little bit and thin the edges. Now you can thin the edges first if you want before you do the cuts. It's your choice. There we are. So I can turn that over, and then what I'm going to do then is I'm going to go in with the large end of my ball tool and just hollow that out, ready for the rose to go into it. And then I'm going to get my glue. And I'm going to glue just in the centre and a little bit just on the tops of the calyx. Now, if you're going to put them in a spray or anything like that, it's a good idea to do your calyx just before you put the rose together while it's still soft. The reason being that when you put it into a spray, there's less chance of breaking the parts of your calyx off if it's soft, whereas if you let it dry, then it's more likely to break off, and then you've got difficulty then trying to repair things. So let's put that upside down and then just drop those petals back into place. They did drop down a little bit while I did that. Bring that down and try and get your calyx to go over the joint of your petal, so you've got a petal overlapping there, so that's where that goes, and same with each of these. Now I'm not going to try and stick them all the way down, because the rose actually they do actually roll back like that, so because these aren't set yet, I can't do that. So, and I've done it on the wrong one, I've done it on my soft one, so I needed to do that on my other one. So I'm just going to do another calyx now and put that on the other rose. In fact, actually I can take that off, can't I, and put that on there. I was doing that the wrong way around. I'm trying to get ahead of myself here. You see what I mean about making mistakes? I've just proved it. That wanted to go on this one. There we are. Right, so again, the points of your calyx want to go where your petals overlap, wherever you can, like that. So if I left that way up, these are going to start to curl back, which is actually what happens with the calyx on the real rose. They just curl back a bit like that, if you can see that. Right, so I'm just going to pop that to one side now, and we're going to get on to the colouring. I'll dust the calyx later when it's dried, But another thing that you can do with your calyx, because it tends to be quite light, you could brush over the inside of your calyx when that's dried with white dust, because they are quite light inside actually if you look at the rose. So if you get out in your garden or go to your florist and have a look at the flowers, have a close look at them, take photographs, go to your garden centre, anywhere like that, and have a good look and see what I mean. So the colour that I'm going to use for the edge of this is called Ruby. I'm just going to get some kitchen roll. Like always, I've got different brushes for doing different things. So I've got one here that I've used for reds and purples and that, so I'm just going to get a bit of red on there. Now I'm not going to do it all the way around all the petals. With this particular one, it's just a little hint of colour here and there. So I'm just going to get my hands underneath that calyx, because that's all drifting back a little bit now. And all I'm going to do is just catch little bits here and there on the edge. Just make sure don't try and get too much colour on your brush, just a tiny little bit, because the colour flicks onto your paste and it can colour it where you don't want it to colour. Just mainly on the outer petals is the colour on this. Just a little bit here and there, just a hint. Like that. I don't know whether you can see that on there. And the colours that I've used for the leaves I'll use on the calyx when I come to dust that. Just get rid of that and show you the colours that I've used. So what I've done with the leaves, I've dusted them all over with ginkgo, which you've seen me use a lot, which is a mid-green colour from Edible Art. And then I've used where are we? I think it was Rainforest that I used for the darker part of the leaf. If I can find where I put my colour. It is on here. There it is. Yeah, Rainforest. So if I just open the colours up and show you. So that's the Rainforest, and that's the ginkgo. You can see the difference in the colours there. So I've dusted all over the leaf with the ginkgo, and then I've dusted up the centre and pulled it out with the dark colour. I think I might have a leaf somewhere. Yes, I have. I've got a leaf here I can use. These didn't vein very properly, so I didn't particularly like those when I did them. I'm just going to move that onto one of my formers there. Put my cutters away. Oops. See what I mean? You have to be careful. Things do go wrong. Just move those over there like that. That's it. Put those back in the box. The other cutters that come in the box, I don't know whether I showed you these earlier on, are these sort of like heart shape. These are for the other. Back in a sec. As I was saying, this is the set of cutters that I got from Valley Cutters on eBay. I don't know whether they have them in other countries. I know that Amazon are all over the place, but these are the ones I got, and it's actually down as a David Austin Rose 6 set is this. So you've got 4 of the heart-shaped cutters and 2 of the other cutters. These are what I'm going to use for the other roses that I'm going to experiment with. Back to the leaves. So the colours that I've used there, I've used the ginkgo all over the leaf like this. And then with my other brush, smaller brush, I've used some of the rainforest, and then I've gone down the centre with this, then pulled it out like that. Can go in a bit heavier and put another layer over the top if you want it. Because these leaves are fairly plain green, rather than doing it just flat plain green, it's always good to add a bit of definition into your leaves, otherwise sometimes you just don't look lifelike at all. So once I've done that, then the next step then is to varnish your leaves. Always keep a brush that you keep just for varnishing. Don't use it for other things. I just use a cheap brush for that. And then all I've done then is just varnish all over the leaf. And if you start from the edge and pull it in, so you're pulling from the light down to the darker shade like that, and it pulls your colour in, and it helps to keep the darker colour in the centre like that. And don't forget to dust the back part of the leaf with the lighter colour. I'll just go over it with that. Whoops, I've got it on my top. Well, just with the ginkgo on the back, because the backs of leaves are always lighter than the front. But using whatever colour you use for your base colour, cover the back of the leaf. That's drying already, is that? So once that's dried, then you can tape all your leaves together. And what I'll do is I'll use the ginkgo to do the calyx on the rose, but I'll do that later when that's dried a bit more. And then what you can do then is to tape your leaf onto the back of your rose like that. Right, so that's how I've made my life-size rose. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I'm just going to move some of these things out of the way and then put the flowers where you can see them. In fact, I might just tape that on before I do that, then it'll look a bit finished. I can dust the back of the calyx later on. There we are. So if you get those out of the way, and bring my other bits and pieces together. So there we are. I put all the 3 stages of the rose. So that's the half rose, that's the full rose, and there you could use that as a bud. So that just gives you an idea on how I make my life-size roses. And as I say, if you've got any questions about anything, leave them in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel as well. The more subscribers we've got, the better it is for us to keep on doing our videos, and that goes for everybody. And hope to see you in the next video. So take care and stay safe, and don't forget, if you've got any ideas about anything that you'd like to see me do, please leave them in the comments below, and I will see what I can do. Take care, stay safe.